Are you exhausted from long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome? You're not alone. It's time to look beyond medication. Let's explore how targeted nutrition and supplements can help you feel better again. Hello, and welcome to this growing community of people who are ready to heal from weird mystery symptoms that conventional medicine doesn't have answers for. I am Carrie Bailey. I am your functional nutritionist, and I help people with long COVID, anxiety, to use specific therapeutic foods, supplements, and herbs to heal. Today, we're talking about chronic fatigue. This is the kind of fatigue that might be triggered either after you got COVID, after you got the COVID vaccine. It's this suddenly hitting the wall. It's the kind of fatigue that does not go away. You don't bounce back. This is a tiredness that doesn't go away no matter how much sleep you get and how much rest you get. This might be impairing your job. You might be losing your job. You might be losing relationships. It can be debilitating. It's this persistent fatigue, but it impairs your daily living, and just simple tasks are exhausting. If you push one day, you're going to crash the next, and you have to conserve your energy for activities. So let's say you had an event tonight that you wanted to go to. You're going to have to rest all day knowing that you want to conserve the energy so that you can use that energy tonight. So it's important to pace yourself, to prioritize sleep in order to heal. Even that, how do you get past that? How do you get past needing more rest? There's so much more that you can do and you need to do in order to heal. Chronic fatigue diagnosis is a differential diagnosis. What does that mean? So that means that they're going to come by this diagnosis by ruling out all other things that it is not. So it is very subjective, right? And you might know you have chronic fatigue and you might have gone to 5 doctors and nobody said it's chronic fatigue, or they give you medication for it. But it's all based on the symptoms that you have, right? That's how they make that diagnosis. It's not fatigue caused by a poor night's sleep or one-time overexertion, right? Compared to regular fatigue, right? So if you go to the doctor and you say, I'm fatigued, they're probably going to say, all right, let's check your blood. Let's see if you have anemia. Oh, okay. Oh, you do. You have low iron, low ferritin, and they're going to give you an iron supplement. And that's going to probably constipate you and not necessarily help the issue along the way. And they might say, oh, you're depressed. Guess what they have for depression? Medication. Here is your medication, right? I've got antidepressants. I've got a whole variety. What that one doesn't work, we'll try another one. They might diagnose you with hypothyroid, because guess what? They have a medication for that too. It's either Synthroid or levothyroxine. And they might even just say you're dehydrated. They might, if you were hospitalized for this chronic fatigue, they might put you on an IV drip, might get a little bit of bounce back and say, okay, you need to hydrate better. Or they might diagnose your dehydration through a urine or blood test. The latest new drug that's being used for chronic fatigue is LDN, also known as low dose naltrexone. And I'm seeing and hearing improvements, but I'm not hearing resolution, right? How about you? Have you tried low dose naltrexone? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. So the symptoms associated with chronic fatigue syndrome might also include muscle and joint pain, headaches, memory or cognitive problems, brain fog. So sort of it might start as memory and cognitive issues and later get to brain fog. You might have sleep that's unrefreshing. You're just as tired when you wake up as when you went to bed. You might have dizziness and lightheadedness, right? When it's light, over time, it might move more towards POTS-like symptoms. What's happening with this ME/CFS? There's so many similarities between chronic fatigue and long COVID, because fatigue is one of the common symptoms, right? And so everybody's fatigue might feel different. Like if you ask 10 different people, it might feel different. But in general, it's fatigue, whether it's chronic fatigue, long COVID. And the reason for that is there's a connection, which is Epstein-Barr virus is the underlying root cause of this. Now, Epstein-Barr can cause a neurological fatigue. This is when your nervous system is inflamed. This can be neurological because your nervous system is here. So your cranial nerves start here, but it can be anywhere in your body. And that's why it's sort of a whole body issue, because your entire body your nervous system runs throughout your whole body. Your nerves are in the whole body. And when they become inflamed, it feels like you can't lift your muscles. It just feels like inflammation everywhere. You also have probably toxins at play, right? Like you might have had some kind of toxin exposure anytime throughout your life. We're all exposed to toxins, some of us more than others. And there's toxin exposure and also the waste of the viruses, right? Just the viruses, they live in you, a living organism that's living inside of you. So it's eating off of you and it's pooping in you. So the waste of the virus is also inflaming your neurons or nervous system. All this excess inflammation is causing a demand for nutrients, right? Your immune system needs a lot of nutrients to be able to be constantly putting out these flames, even though it's not really putting out the flames, right? It's just the slow burn of inflammation. This is why food is so important, because nutrients are important. The Epstein-Barr virus also interferes with your ability to methylate. So if you watched last week's video I did on methylation, the virus interferes with it. It either can't make enough methylfolate or B12 in order to methylate. So this can lead to nutrient deficiencies and downstream issues, right? Once you're deficient in a nutrient, your body's pretty smart, right? It wants to constantly be balanced, but if it's low on one thing, it's going to compensate and try to do things on another level. It's important to look back into your timeline. So if you were to journal, if you would, or create a timeline of your life, of all the events that happen in your life, whether it's toxin exposure, surgeries, car accidents, poor diet, binging, alcohol, excess alcohol use in college, different things like that. This will give you some insight as to where things might have started. And some things can happen. It could be triggered by, your immune system being low. Maybe you got a bunch of flu viruses, or you got exposed to a lot of different things at one time. Maybe it's stressful events in your life, death of a loved one, a car accident, a surgery, pregnancy. So many things can trigger this. And the trigger can happen even like 2 years later, right? So like maybe it happened 2 years after a car accident or 2 years after pregnancy that you really notice the onset of symptoms. COVID and the COVID vaccine, or even other vaccines. I've heard of people with the shingles vaccine that are struggling with these types of symptoms as well. So those are triggers. You're probably thinking, okay, Carrie, that's great. Now what do I do? How do I heal? How do I figure this out? So the first important thing that you need to do is support your immune system, because when you understand that there's a virus at play, a virus underlying, then in order for your body to fight the virus, we need to make sure your immune system is strong. And so that means if you want to get a handle on inflammation, you need to increase your immune system. This means bringing in lots of fruit. Let's talk about fruit, because in today's diet landscape, fruit is often bullied, right? It's often seen, this thing started this anti-sugar campaign, and somehow it morphed into all sugars are bad, and even good healthy fruits are bad. So let's talk about what happened there. So there are good sugars and there are bad sugars, again, to sort of black and white it. I don't usually like to black and white it, but you want to avoid refined sugar, right? Because refined sugar is imbalanced, right? It's missing minerals. So when you eat that sugar, it's going to have to pull minerals out of your bones, out of your body, in order to use that sugar, in order to break it down and get rid of it, right? Your body requires nutrients to do that. And then there's other bad sugars like high fructose corn syrup. These are things that you might find in processed foods, in sodas or pop, as we used to call it back in Ohio. Candy, if you eat a lot of candy, that's going to have high fructose corn syrup. I would say that I noticed a shift when, kind of in hindsight, looking back, maybe around 2012, which is about the time I started studying nutrition. And it might have been my experience with Candida, right? So it's like, oh, you've got Candida. And so I learned all about the Candida diet, which was to avoid all sugars, right? So no honey, no nothing. You'd have stevia, you might have monk fruit. You were to avoid all forms of fruit. If you were to eat fruit, it was okay to have a green apple or berries, because those were the lowest in glucose. We got into this thing of even avoiding healthy forms of glucose, like fruits and starchy carbs and honey and maple syrup. And to me, those are really the best things to be eating. But going back to this fruit thing, there is no evidence, no data, no studies that say that fruit is bad for our health. So where is this fear of fruit coming from? Fruit is not making you sick. I promise you, right? And if you aren't doing good with fruit, I would ask a lot of questions. We'll get into those. But fruit has water, has a lot of moisture in it, right, for hydration. It has minerals, it has vitamins, and it has naturally occurring antiviral properties, antibacterial properties. So along with like raw enzymes, like these raw enzymes and these special phytonutrients that are in fruit, you cannot get in a supplement, right? They've pulled out some of them. They pulled out resveratrol and quercetin out of fruits and put them into a supplement form in high dose, but they don't replace, they're meant to supplement, not replace fruit. You can't heal on supplements alone. I hear this a lot of times where people are like, oh no, don't change your diet. We're just going to put in these supplements. And that just doesn't work. I see and hear well-intentioned practitioners saying recommended supplements without making dietary components. And you just can't do that. You have to make dietary changes. And diet's hard, right? There's a lot of emotional tied to diet. But if you can't make those dietary changes, you're not going to heal. I've proved that for myself, proved that with my clients. It's foundational and you cannot skip that part. Fruit has glucose, right? This is the fuel every cell in your body and your liver and your nervous system requires. Your muscles need glucose. Do your muscles need fat? No. Does your liver need fat? No. Does your nervous system need fat? No. Now, your body cannot live without glucose. It's the primary source of fuel for every cell in your body. And I say that, and then I've heard comments from my loving community here that says that, well, what about gluconeogenesis, Carrie, or ketosis? And okay, so let's address those. Those are backup systems. These are not good for people whose health is compromised, right? If you're super healthy and you want to go into ketosis or gluconeogenesis, then go for it, right? But that's a backup system. That is always going to be harder on your body than just providing your body with glucose, with what it needs. Because if your body just wants to heal, don't make your body work harder than it has to. Glucose is crucial for brain function and overall energy metabolism. So if you cut out glucose, you will likely cheat. So if you're on a carnivore or keto diet for a long period of time, right, depending on how depleted your glucose gets, but at some point you're going to be feeling like you need to cheat. Or again, I don't like that word, right? But you're going to go off carnivore and you're going to go off keto because your body needs glucose. Your body needs carbs. There's a much greater chance that when you need those carbs or glucose, that your body's going to reach for things that aren't necessarily the best choice, like chocolate, pasta, cereal, right? Instead of fruit, right? Have you ever been like, oh, I'm having this craving, and somebody's like, here, have an apple. And you're like, yeah, no, this isn't an apple craving. This is like, I need chocolate. I need pasta. I need something bigger and badder. You don't, just because you're carnivore doesn't mean you have to be strict carnivore. You could do a variation of carnivore, a variation of keto. So I would recommend, and what I recommend is to do this for breakfast because you've had all night, your liver's had time to rest and cleanse. In the morning is the perfect time for fruit because fruit digests very fast. Proteins and fats are much harder to digest. So when you have that fruit in the morning, fruit is going to be digested first in your mouth, right? You've got the saliva, you've got the digestive enzymes in your saliva that's going to break down carbs. That's what it's meant to do. So that digestion starts in your mouth. You're going to chew it really well. It's going to go into your stomach. And by the time it leaves your stomach, it's pretty much already fully digested. It only takes about an hour for fruit to digest. And then if you wait an hour after eating fruit, then go back to eating meat if that's what you want to do. Proteins and fats are much harder to digest than fruit. So this is why, especially if you have chronic fatigue, when you eat more fruits and vegetables and less protein and fat, you're giving your digestive system a break, right? So digesting those foods is harder, which is harder on your body. So if you have chronic fatigue, let's give your body a break for digesting food, right, as well. Because digesting protein and fat is the hardest thing for your body. Believe it or not, you can sustain on fruit all day, every day, right? Although you probably need some kind of greens in there for minerals and balance. I have heard people say, oh, I can't eat fruit all day. It makes me feel inflamed. And to which case I go, okay, well, there's still something missing. Maybe you're not methylating. Maybe you don't have the digestive enzymes that you need. Maybe you need more minerals on board, right? And I like to do that in the form of greens. So if you have, again, it's a balance of everything, right? It's the Goldilocks. So if you have too much fruit and not enough greens, it's going to feel off, right? But if you add some greens in there and then the fruit together, those are going to balance. I want to break some myths that there are out there about fruit. Again, and I think it goes back to the sugar thing, where fruit does not feed cancer. I'm just going to break that right there. There's no, I'm sure you will find no evidence out there that fruit feeds cancer. And we talked about this earlier, but most of the fruit is digested in your stomach. And so it's not digested in your small intestine. So it's not contributing to SIBO in any way. If you ate a piece of fruit at the same time as you ate a burger, then that's where the problem lies, right? It's the combination of the two. But it's not the fruit in your stomach that's causing the problem. It's actually the proteins and fats, or the combination of protein, fat, and sugar. That's the problem. Okay, so let's say I've convinced you that eating fruit's okay and safe. But if you're accustomed to sweets in the forms of cookies, candy, cake, then fruit might not actually be that appealing. It may take time for you to acclimate to fruit or the sweetness, right? So get curious, start exploring fruit. One example of a fruit I had never even tried until my 30s was dates, right? I had not ever discovered them. And then a friend introduced me to dates, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And now dates are a staple in my pantry. They're amazing for adding sweetness. When you are having a sugar craving, they really do satisfy it. To me, dates and raisins are my go-tos when I need a really strong bit of glucose. I often recommend dates for my clients when they're craving sweetness, right? So if it's something calls for one date, you might find you need 2 or 3 dates in there. So it just depends on you. Everybody's different. Some people need more minerals, some people need more glucose. I find that dates are a great way to transition off baked goods. So if you're feeling like I need a baked good, which is a mix of, eggs, usually eggs, butter, flour, and sugar, right? That combination. And if you're craving that, because that is sort of a texture, it's a heaviness, it's something that fills you up. And if you're seeking that full feeling from a baked good, then you need to transition slowly with fruits. And I like dates to do that. If you have a fear of fruit, share your experience and any reactions that you experience from adding in fruit. Do you feel like it makes you inflamed or worse? Share in the comments below. When you've got chronic fatigue, so we talked about fruit and how amazing fruit is. So you want to bring more fruit in, but let's talk about some things we want to get rid of when it comes to chronic fatigue. And I'm going to say grains. I'm going to globalize it to all grains, but more specifically, gluten and wheat for sure. The number one food when I pull out for people, if they've never been on an elimination diet and I pull out gluten, it's the number one food that people go, oh my gosh, I have so much more energy. So they don't realize how much it's dragging it down. And it can be the other grains as well. Those are definitely not healing foods. They're good for transitioning foods. So sometimes people need oats or something to transition to this way of eating because they're not used to it. So if you're going from a standard American diet, bring in some oats. But otherwise, I try to avoid most grains. The other thing I recommend removing are seed oils. So this is canola oil, vegetable oil, safflower oil, oils like that are made of corn or grains. You want to pull those out as much as possible. And you actually want to move towards more of a low fat. So this also includes either taking out or reducing animal protein. You might need to reduce nuts and seeds. So if you are living on nuts and seeds and that you're grazing on those all day long, definitely something you want to reduce. If you still want that fat, is to use avocado, right? Avocado is a great supplement. So supplement to fat, I mean, right? So if you're like feeling like I can't let go of my fat, Carrie, then have some avocado, right? And also some clean oils like olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil are my 3 favorite oils. Whether you use that on a salad for dressing, or I love to just use an avocado on a salad for dressing. I put together an amazing tool to help you heal from long COVID and chronic fatigue, and I'm super excited to share it with you. It's my long COVID recovery guide. This guide is my essential steps to heal. It works for both long COVID and chronic fatigue, and there is a link in both the comments and the description below for you to check out. Let's talk a little bit about supplements and foods. We'll kind of do both, right? That will support your immune system. You will definitely need vitamin C, and you can get this again through citrus, bell peppers, even leafy greens like arugula and spinach. But you might also want to bring in an actual supplement with vitamin C. And I've talked about this in past videos, but you want to look for a buffered vitamin C and not ascorbic acid, because ascorbic acid is usually made from genetically modified corn, and it's can be very harsh and acidic on the digestive system. Other supplements to support your immune system are zinc and lysine. And I've talked about lysine. These are my two favorites. So you hear about me talking about them all the time. But lysine is found in potatoes. So if you love potatoes, then have lots of potatoes. And as an alternative to fruit, that's a really good starchy carb to get your glucose in. Let's talk about another supplement that I haven't talked about yet. And I haven't because I work with so many like sensitive people and reactive people that I just want to warn you about this one before I talk about it. But if you can tolerate it, if you have never tried it before, proceed with caution. But glutathione. Glutathione is the supplement that I recommend. This is after you methylate, the process below it that's taking all the sulfurs. It's a sulfur compound, and it's like your major antioxidant in your body. And so you need a lot of glutathione. If you aren't methylating well, right? If your methylation is slow or you're reacting to methyls, then you might be reacting to glutathione as well. So, but your glutathione is low if you're not methylating as well either. Glutathione supports your body to release toxins like mercury and aluminum, which can be at the root cause of chronic fatigue in addition to viruses. Glutathione is found naturally in avocados, asparagus, and garlic. So if you know you don't do well with those foods, don't try glutathione. That's the ultimate guide. If you do well with avocados, asparagus, and garlic, add more of those in for sure. That's just the beginner way to once you get your body to a certain level, then down the road, you can try to add in glutathione. If you know you react to glutathione or any of those foods, another thing you can try is sort of the prior step to glutathione, which is NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine. And this is a supplement you might have heard about a lot during COVID because people were having it's really good for bronchial stuff, any kind of coughing, chest stuff. N-acetylcysteine, also called NAC, NAC, is really good for getting you there in a gentler way. Some other reasons you might be low in glutathione, besides not being able to methylate, is if you've had high fat intake, you could be low in glutathione. And also if you've been on the birth control pill for any number of years, even if it was in your younger years, glutathione could be low. You also may need more glutathione if you live in a heavy air pollution area. The more toxin load you have in your body, the more glutathione you need. But again, everybody's different. My super sensitive, super actives aren't ready for that, but that just means they're super toxic and just don't have the resources yet to detoxify. If you are enjoying my videos, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you found this video helpful. All right, let's summarize everything we talked about today. We talked about chronic fatigue syndrome, which is a really debilitating syndrome, whether it's chronic fatigue syndrome that you've actually been diagnosed with, whether it's the chronic fatigue you've experienced during long COVID. It's just really a debilitating fatigue. It can really take your life down because you just can't even almost take care of yourself sometimes. What's behind this is the Epstein-Barr virus, and this virus is also interfering. So it's inflaming your nerves in your entire body. It's inflaming your nervous system, causing the drain on your energy. It is interfering in your ability to methylate, which is also the cycle that helps you make energy. So this is viruses are creating this whole body inflammation. We talked about solutions. We talked about how fruit can be very helpful, and the glucose from fruit is really helpful. And we talked a lot about fear of fruit. There is no science that says fruit is harmful or leads to candida. The fruit myth started about 12 years ago, and I think it's time to let it go. People with chronic fatigue syndrome desperately need the glucose, but they also need minerals to offset this nerve inflammation. Just like, your electrical system of your body is like the electrical system of your car. It's your nervous system. You have to have the minerals and glucose and hydration. With chronic fatigue, we also want to think about boosting the immune system, supporting the immune system with vitamin C, zinc, and lysine, the foods and supplements that are rich in those nutrients. And the final supplement I recommended was glutathione. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye for now.